All my subscribers, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. We have with us one of the members of the Jamaica Labour Party Communication Task Force, Marlon Morgan. You heard Ralston a while ago, Marlon. Welcome. Happy New Year, my brethren. All the best for 2025. Quick question. Is the government borrowing to finance the budget?
No, that is something that I'd want to look into some more, because what I do know is that Jamaica has a stock of debt, right? And from time to time, you raise finances in order to retire existing debt and certainly more expensive money. So you try to avail yourself of cheaper money to replace or change out debt that is higher costing. So Jamaica is borrowing, but just to be very clear, right? When we speak about not borrowing or whatever, the gist of that was that Jamaica is not borrowing at unsustainable levels compared to what it was in the past. So the point is, in terms of paying down the debt, what has been ensuing is a strategy of paying down the debt, because by the end of this financial year, we're set to be in the order of 70% debt to GDP. Yes? So the thrust of it is that paying down the debt as opposed to getting into unsustainable debt levels. So when reference was made to not borrowing money, it was speaking essentially to not getting into unsustainable levels of debt, because from time to time, government will float an instrument, as we have seen in announced, I think it may have been today or yesterday. There are going to be two instruments floated, two government bonds. One will fall due in 2026 or 2027 rather, and the other will fall due sometime thereafter, I think in probably another 20 or so years from now.
And that is actually borrowing.
From time to time, you replace debt with, so that is raising funds, that's correct.
But outside of borrowing to do that, Marlon, the budget this financial year is $1.38 trillion. Isn't it a fact that the government is borrowing about 260 billion to support the budget, for budgetary support we're talking about?
Well, like I said, in relation to fiscal year 24-25, that's something that I would prefer to just double check and satisfy myself on. I think the answer is in the affirmative, but I would prefer the opportunity to double check that matter and satisfy myself on it. Because just to be clear, the gravamen at this point, because I hear Ralston and I understand the point of, seeking to split hairs and speaking to embarrass and a kind of gotcha journalism. Nobody is frightened, my friend, for gotcha journalism. So
no, that's not it.
Where Jamaica is coming from, right, is the accumulation and acquisition of unsustainable, reckless, ill-advised, and high-cost debt. Meaning borrowing at levels well in excess of what the country is able to afford and what the country is reasonably able to sustain. That is no longer the case, and that is the key takeaway for your viewers, my friend. That's the key takeaway for JLP supporters. That's the key takeaway for PNP supporters. There's a new dynamic in town. It was something
Minister
that commenced,
Morgan
I
also
believe.
came out swinging, saying that unlike...
Hold on, Marlon. Sorry about that. Continue. Go ahead. Continue.
So I'm saying, Jamaica used to be in a situation, Colin, where we were reckless in the management of our country's financial affairs in terms of accumulating debt. We are no longer at that point. So I don't need to split hairs with Ralston about whether the government is floating a bond or not.
Explain this statement for me. Explain this statement.
Mr. Golding's party, the Holiness Administration is able to undertake extensive road repair projects without borrowing.
The reason the government is able to do this, while previous governments, of which Mr. Golding was a part, were unable to do it, is because of how we have managed the economy. We have managed the economy in a way where, for the first time in a very long time, the government has been able to spend money to uplift the country without having to borrow.
Explain that to me, Marlon.
My brother. From time to time, or certainly in the past, when Jamaica had any road work to undertake...
Where you gone? Where you gone, so dark? We're not seeing you. We're not seeing you, Marlon. We're hearing you, but we're not seeing you.
Cool. So I've just effected the fix. What I'm saying, in a time gone by, if Jamaica was ravaged by a hurricane, or if the government of Jamaica devised a road program where it wanted to put down road infrastructure, it would have to do so by going to some financial institution, whether it is, the World Bank, or to float essentially an instrument on the private capital markets to raise funds. That is essentially how Jamaica would have financed the road work that it has to do. We have much more fiscal room at present. So the gist of it is that by virtue of the responsible way in which the economy has been managed and the debt has been paid down, it frees up more money, more fiscal space to allow Jamaica to turn itself now into attending to our local issues, our local problems, much of which have eluded us in yesteryears, and we are now devising more local-based solutions to the local-based problems that we have. For example, the state of disrepairs in our road. So let me just give it a short response, my brother. I am not going to be on this program and say that Jamaica isn't borrowing money. Yes, first and foremost, in relation to this particular financial year, 24-25, and in relation to an upcoming supplemental budget that will be coming, I'm going to be using the opportunity or taking the opportunity to satisfy myself as to any borrowing to satisfy the government's fiscal program for this financial year. But separate and apart from that, I want the key understanding. Because I wanted to understand, yes, and the viewers as well, that Jamaica, where we are at present, we are no longer at levels of unsustainable debt accumulation. Our debt, my brother, I can convey that to Ralston Hyman. Our debt here in Jamaica, our stock of debt relative to GDP is coming south as opposed to going north. So the debt stock as a percentage of GDP is being
down. That is
down,
true.
it's coming down.
That
But
is
it
a
is
fact.
not a case that the government does not go into the market and raise funds. So to be technically correct, Jamaica is borrowing. I would want to satisfy myself further as to the financing operations for this financial year, and I would like it to give me the opportunity so to do in terms of just satisfying myself, because I don't speak loosely and I don't seek to mislead people.
Tell me if this statement is true, if this piece of news here is true.
The details. The government of Jamaica borrowed $102.22 billion during the period April to November of this fiscal year. This was $2.15 billion, or 2.2% more than projected for. Some $55 billion of this amount was obtained from the domestic market and $46.49 billion from the external sources.
Stay in. Is that true?
I'm going to repeat my response a while ago. The answer to the question you're posing to me, Colin, is an emphatic yes.
Thank you.
All right.
That's all.
Let's
move on.
Three-letter response to your question.
Yes.
But separate and apart from that three-letter response, I want to say this to you. When reference is being made in many quarters to borrowing, the simple distinction and the sharp distinction being